we are not experts. She is at least a part of the IOE Sanskrit department project. I don't even know Sanskrit. I'm just about able to read Devanagari, which I struggled to learn around 2019-20. So my knowledge of Sanskrit is... So we are not going to talk about Indian research methodologies and what to take from Sanskrit, because there are enough scholars and experts here who know much more. Even an MA student in Sanskrit will know more than I do. So that's not what the focus of our talk is. What we are going to do is, this is going to be a reflective talk on our experiences of doing research in English language education, which is our area of work, and how and why we were not able to root ourselves with an Indian perspective. And why and how it is absolutely essential that we root our work in this land, Bharat, with which is our perspective. So, my first question is going to be, why should we move to Indianness, if I can call it that? What is Indianness? And should we move at all to Indianness? What is wrong with all the research that's being done? I've guided research, she's guided research, and we have not been able to touch on Indianness in that research. I finished 32 years as a professor in a university without doing it. So what's the big deal?
Moreover, perhaps we need to talk about the kind of education system that we came from. Both of us came from the convent system of education, where speaking in another language was punishable by fine. And we were not allowed to wear bangles, nor anything on the forehead, any tilak, any marks, or even mehendi on our hands. We were not allowed any of those things. And we were supposed to be in prim and proper uniforms, neatly ironed with shoes and socks. Even though it was 38 degrees of temperature during summer in the states that we studied in. So coming from that systems where every prayer was to the God Almighty sitting, thou art in heaven, so on and so forth. And we celebrated Christmas, we celebrated every other festival, but we were deprived, we were stripped of our Indianness. So we were, in that sense, we were groomed to become somebody that the colonial masters left behind.
See, 11 years of my school life, Gupshapur Convent, Madras. Every day in assembly we were asked to do this and chant the Lord's Prayer, which I knew backwards and forwards. We were not allowed to chant any shlokam. We were made to, by that Soldiers of God Catholic institution. Where is all of that?
We do not disrespect any system, but we are trying to portray how we were stripped of our heritage and culture systematically, even after so many years, how and why, most importantly, this has been in the forefront without any conscious discussion. So we are going back in history to find out what this is all about. And we are going to begin to start tracing our own school lives and our own lives as teachers and as students.
And if we don't do that, what will happen? I'm just going to I don't have the picture, all of you have it in your minds. In any organization, okay, central government, state government, any place where our flag is hoisted, Independence Day and Republic Day. I don't know, it's not in my university, not at EFL University, I don't know about here. You cannot, the person hoisting the flag is not likely to hoist that flag wearing what I would call a panchakachya veshti, what you would call a dhoti and a kurta. You're expected to wear shoes, a tie, a coat. 75 years since we got independence. When will our Indian clothes, the sari is accepted. But when will that dress get independence? That is Indianness. Now we have to go back and ask ourselves what happened and why. And for that,
just before we began the session, the tea session was called high tea, which is very British. But we have criticized that and we have made a sarcasm of it, and where we said it is called high tea only because it is at a higher level than the auditorium. So we need to reclaim our Indianness.
And the delight, I will say, rather than having a cutlet or a cake or a samosa, Putarekulu was served. Very rare in a conference. I'm delighted at that. I'm eating it for the first time in a conference. Okay, but let's go back and trace our history. See, a lot of this goes back to colonialism. Now, what about colonialism? Where does it go?
And we are challenging all of us to dare to be different, because most of the research that gets done is West-oriented. We need to challenge, because the references come from the West. The topics come from the West. The theoretical frameworks come from the West. The citations come from the West. And we are not valuing what is our own. And if we don't do it, who else is going to do it for us?
Exactly.
If we are ashamed, if we do not respect our own soil, our own brothers and sisters, who else is going to do that? Anything that comes in white, anything that comes from Cambridge or University Press, Oxford University Press is seen as a celebrated text.
But something that comes from our country is kind of...
Why do we look down upon? So there's a lot of history that is behind this culture that comes into the Indian academia. And in a very short while, you're going to find out why it is important and necessary for us to dare and be different.
Those of you who need mail IDs, we've put them up. Ask us otherwise outside, we'll tell you. So those of you for whom it is familiar, apologies. Okay, we are going back to what is known as Macaulay's Minute 1835. Okay, this is much before India became India, before independence, but a lot of our education and our problems and what we need to do and should not be doing goes back to this text.
Because our knowledge systems as constructed, our universities, our classrooms, everything would be a reflection of this Macaulay Minute. So the problems begin from here.
See, there was a charter that was brought out as an Act of Parliament in 1813. And imagine, think of the amount of money, a lakh of rupees, set aside only for this purpose. Now, I want us to look at the words, both of us. Learned natives of India. See, can I make a request? Don't try photographing. There are only 5 slides. Any of you who want it, ask us. We'll give you a copy, soft copy of the presentation if required. Just listen and try and take in what we are saying. Okay? So the assumption was that we did not have any of the sciences with us. Who are the inhabitants of the British territories? Us, our forefathers. And they were going to come and teach us.
We are called inhabitants of the British territory, with so many years of history that we have. And the speakers before us spoke about Panini, spoke about various personalities. But then we become inhabitants. That means we weren't there, but then we are part of the British territories.
And our identity has begun only after they came in as an East India Company, came in to do business. They did not come for any other reason. They came because they wanted our rich, our wealth.
And the reason why he calls some of us learned natives is
because I'm sorry, I pressed the wrong one. See, learned natives for him were those educated only in Arabic and Sanskrit. And if you did not know Milton, Locke or Newton, we were not educated. So, Paninian grammar, leave grammar, Vakyapatiyam, Mahabhashyam or all that everybody spoke about did not exist for them. They just pushed it under, not even a carpet, under a huge building and buried it. And said, you people, you are stupid. You have to be educated.
You're savage.
You're a savage. You are illiterate. You are uncivilized. And that was the education that was forced upon us. So
all the school education textbooks had poetry from the British writers. So they were just imposed on us in a very soft manner, so that we were ashamed of our own roots. That is why all of us are like this. It's not our fault. It has been the system's fault, because this was peddled down to us. Wherever possible, it was done very softly. Wherever not possible, it was done in a very harsh manner.
See, I'm not talking about the teaching of English literature, which anyway was brought into India because they said we have to bring in Christianity through the back door. You cannot impose the religion, prescribe English literature. To study it, you have to go back and read the Bible and the Psalms and all those references. Automatically, Christianity will come in. I'm not talking of that. Think of your school textbooks. Those of you who are of a younger age now, yes.
William Blake.
Those days it was only William Wordsworth, Daffodils. Even today that poem is prescribed.
Why don't we have the Tulsi plant? Why don't we have the mango tree? Why don't we have any? But we have to go back to daffodils, which is not a native variety. So
you can't understand.
The placement of your belongingness is taken away from under your feet. See, we were also one of those people.
Exactly.
Because we were brought up in such a convent culture, made to feel ashamed of our own systems.
You know, I remember
our own languages.
I remember reading this poem called Lucy Gray by William Wordsworth in class 4. And she looked up and yonder was the moon at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I read it one May in Madras. It was not Chennai then. And I remember going out and looking up at this huge sun, 40 degrees, and saying, how can the moon be there in the afternoon? Only when you go to England and you understand that in winter it gets dark by 4, do you even realize what that poem meant? Why were we asked to read those poems? Is this just
because of this man?
Okay, let me go to the next. Now, look at that statement. The dialects spoken. So, Hindi, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Marathi, Assamese, all are languages. have been brought into one term, dialect. Dialect meaning it's not a language, it's a part of one language. And that term, look at the statement. I don't know how to pronounce this word.
Such persons as might have studied in the sacred books of the Hindus all the uses of kusa prayers and all the mysteries of absorption into the deity.
Now, what we use for religious purposes, I say dharba in Tamil, dharba grass, dharba maybe in Sanskrit, I don't know the Sanskrit term, is put into and condemned. This is what we are fighting against. Let's look at what the next one is. The dialects commonly, I'll read from here. The dialects commonly spoken among the natives of this part of India contain neither literary nor scientific information and are moreover so poor and rude that unless and until they are enriched from some other quarter, it will not be easy to translate any valuable work into them. What kind of a statement is this? I read it, I get so angry. I said, how dare you do this? What are you doing to us?
And all of us are dismissed with this just one statement where he says, it will not be easy to translate any valuable work into them. That means our entire history, the culture, the heritage, the festival, the food, the dress, everything has been dismissed.
As not valuable, and we don't have... See, we heard Professor Madhusudan Rao list the kind of texts we have, what is lost, what is available. And then we are told...
And that too by Britishers who got into the drama genre only in the 16th century with Shakespeare or slightly before that. But we have the Adi Kavya, the Adi dramatist, I do not know, I'm sorry about the lack of Sanskrit, that we have Kalidasa with us. So we have Valmiki with us. And all that they can boast of is just one Milton and somebody else, one Shakespeare. But how much more can you milk Shakespeare and Milton? And for how long can you do that?
And therefore, he very clearly says that he did not know any of these languages. And he read translations. How poor, how bad, we don't know at all. But based only on those translations, what were the conclusions that he came to? Just read that. I'm just going to leave it there. I'm not even going to read it out. Professor Prasad just now told us during the inaugural, am I right, that Iliad and Odyssey together are less than our Itihashas. Bhagavata, Ramayana, Mahabharata. You didn't even mention Srimad Bhagavatam. He mentioned only Ramayana and Mahabharatam. And this is the statement he made. One shelf. The arrogance, the superiority. What is it?
Because without that, there was no possibility of the British coming and taking control of all of us. Because even for a single word such as dal that we have in our Hindi and pulses as they call it, I don't think they had any such variety growing in their own native land. For example, urad dal is called as black gram. And as a second standard student, I had a serious problem looking at urad dal because one, it was white in color when the skin or the coat was not there. But somehow I went to the shop and I got hold of the whole one. But the gram had a green coat. But it was not green gram. Green gram was moong dal. But this was black gram. And then you have a cowpea. And then you have, what is that? A chickpea.
So do chicken eat that, our good old chana that we make chole?
And then there's horse gram. These stupid fellows did not even have the kind of varieties of dal that we have. Forget about dal makhani and tomato papu and all of that.
Pepper went from here.
So they couldn't even, they did not even have the knowledge of coining a term in English. Cowpea, horse gram. What was this? And they have the nerve to dismiss all of our history and heritage and culture and literature by equating it to one shelf of European books. If we do not reclaim our position, our knowledge systems now, who else is going to do it for us? Who's going to come from outside and do it for us? And looking at the audience, it is on our shoulders now to reclaim, to dare to be different. Because there are people in the garb of Macaulay in every one of our schools, our departments, our supervisors, our teachers, faculty, students, everywhere. So we need to, first of all, dare to be different, because we need to come back to our own root systems and disprove this man and his minute.
Please read this. There is no exaggeration to say that all the historical information which has been collected from all the books written in the Sanskrit language is less valuable than what may be found in the most paltry abridgments used at preparatory schools in India.
The fellow who couldn't name, a dal, the whole gamut of people who couldn't understand that the black gram is different from the green gram and is different from the chickpea and the cowpea and, the horse gram, is making such a statement. And such statements and people who carry these statements as billboards on their heads, invisible to all of us, are walking amongst us.
Therefore, he decides that English should be the language of education. Actually, I feel very sad that I cannot do this talk in my mother tongue, Tamil, and that the language of academics is English. But yes, we've taken that language, we've made it our own. We will use that language to achieve our ends. But look at this. The literature of England is now more valuable than that of classical antiquity, and says, I wonder whether the Sanskrit literature is as valuable as that of our Saxon and Norman progenitors. Until the Norman invasion, the English language was impoverished. It's only with the influence of Latin and French that language got better. And he has the gall to say this. And then he goes and compares us with Russia. And he says, the languages of Western Europe civilized Russia. And they will do for the Hindu, look at the spelling, what they've done for the Tartar. Hindu. It's not Hindu, it's Hindu. In one fell swoop, he removes everything. The culture, the heritage, our ways of knowing, everything. Wasting the best years of life in learning what procures for them neither bread nor respect. So they eat only bread. They don't eat rice. They don't eat chapatis.
And we don't need bread anyway, unless we are sick. Exactly. We have our idlis and dosas and chapatis and pulkas and, a lot of our own, now that they call it Indian flatbread. We have tandoori roti, all kinds of rotis we have. But we don't need their bread.
We are both very clear. We do not say, I earn my bread. We say,
we earn for our idli and chutney.
Idli, chutney, chapati, dosha, whatever it is.
And it is very important and pertinent for all of us to note that in the many generations of students that both of us have taught, we have found a common pattern where people feel ashamed if they are not able to speak in English.
Exactly. And if they...
unable to understand that English is such a stupid, impoverished language, and very many people talk about the pronunciation. People mock about the Indians pronouncing English in certain ways. We make certain mistakes. But then, those fellows who cannot even pronounce the word Ganga properly, and they call it the Ganges and the Himalayas, they don't have a problem mispronouncing our words.
Ask them to come and say Vatsala.
Or even our own names. She becomes Geetha.
I become Geetha. Geetha Durairajan. I lived in England for 1 year on a scholarship. And I told the National Health Service people not to try the Durairajan. It was beyond them. The first time they called out, Geetha Durairajan. I said, I'm Geetha. Please call me that.
Because they don't even have that.
I'm sorry, my term will come only in Tamil for that. It never came into their mouths.
And when we ask them to try and say this word Tripura Sundari, Tripura.
I think the Aussies, they said, where are they? There's this WhatsApp chat that is going around everywhere. Do you know where the Aussies are? And all the Aussie cricketers trying to say Thiruvananthapuram.
Finished.
Impossible.
But then they don't feel ashamed of not knowing our languages. But why is it that we feel ashamed, we feel inadequate, inefficient if we are not able to speak English? Let's do it our own way. We have about 586 different sounds in any of the languages that we take. And English has only 44 sounds, of which nearly 30 sounds are similar to us. There's only about 10 sounds, or maybe 5 of them that we have a problem with. So we don't need to feel ashamed. We will use English to attack English.
Exactly. This is what the British wanted to do. Form a class who may be interpreters between us and the millions we govern. A class of persons, Indian in blood and colour, but English in tastes, in opinions, in morals and in intellect. That is where the civil services group started. We need people to govern. We are sitting there, they are sitting here. We need people to govern us through others like us.
So they've left a lot of people whom we call as the Macaulay's children. So the Macaulay's children are walking about in situations like, the kinds that all of us occupy. We wouldn't be able to distinguish them because they are going to be carrying their colonial mindsets. They're going to be transporting and propagating and reproducing colonial mindsets, but we wouldn't be able to identify because they are going to do it through the back door very softly and very gradually, so that one fine day we wake up and we know that we have lost our identity. And it is time for us to reclaim the Indian knowledge systems and free ourselves from Macaulay's effect and identify the colonial mindsets in people around us who are Indian in blood and color, but they have their English taste. So we need to identify such people and protect ourselves, because it's a matter of existence now. Because if we don't do it, nobody is going to come and do it for us. Because you speak in Telugu in your school, it might happen to our children, our brothers, sisters. They're going to be fined. You shall not speak in any other language other than English. You will be fined 10 rupees. You cannot wear a tilak. You cannot wear your bangles. You cannot wear your dress. There's going to be only a colored dress on your birthday. You cannot wear anklets. None of these things. This is because unless they do that, our culture and heritage is so strong, it's impossible for somebody to come and influence us unless we are ashamed of our own knowledge systems. Whatever knowledge systems that we come through. We are not talking of a particular religion. We are talking of the land. How often do we not see people walking around in blazers in 45 degrees temperature in Hyderabad or in Chennai? And then you switch on all the ACs.
Think of all the wedding receptions. I'm sorry, I'm not criticizing any particular individual here. But it is assumed that if you don't wear a suit,
it's not a reception.
It's not a wedding reception. Why? Why can't you wear a pair of dhoti and a kurta, or a pair of pajamas? I don't know
whatever is our own tradition.
Style.
So this is because of Mr. Macaulay and the children that he left behind. So it's time that we reclaim our heritage, our roots, and let that begin in our classrooms, in all the academics that we do. And if we do not do it, nobody is going to come and do it for us. So with that, we
see, the last statement is where, again, I'm going back to what Professor Madhusudan Rao spoke about. He listed so many texts which are lost. Nalanda University and all the, I have the Tamil only in, I have the term only in Tamil. Ola Chuvadi, the Palmyra manuscripts, which were burned. We don't have those texts. Okay, that was one kind of physical destruction by one group of invaders. What did the British do? They destroyed us here. See, we're going to talk about work in the afternoon, about further work, and we're going to pick up this topic, but I will stop with one query about research work that is done. Think about it. Where are you supposed to get your information about what topic to work on? How do you get it? Where do you get it? Why do you get it? What makes you choose a good research topic? I'm not talking about the Indian research methodology topics, which I'm very glad are coming up and being discussed today. I would like to leave you with that question. Because what we are going to do in the afternoon is go back to personal history. Talk about our own experiences of what happened and reflect on that and move forward. Any questions?
One or two questions if they are there.
Any questions,
otherwise,
clarifications?
Probably. If there are no questions, then
this is the end with which we'd like to stop.
Email ID once.
Sure.
I'm Pinku Jha from Vadodara. I'm a research scholar doing work on Mahabharata from Political Science Department. So my question is, since I'm not well equipped with Sanskrit language, so I'm referring translations. So as one of the issue you highlighted while we were talking about Macaulay, so he was not aware of these languages, but still he was criticizing. So how far, if I am doing work on Mahabharata, I am referring English translations only. So how far I can justify my work, because I'm trying to, I'm having some basic understanding, that's fine, but the context, maybe that's the one of the justification, because I'm aware of the other things as well. So is it fine? I'm justifying my research, so I just want to clarify it. So how can I solve this issue if somebody will ask me this question?
Yeah, one, you need to identify the one of the best translations in English that is available. For that, I think you may have to go back to the Sanskrit department, Professor Prasad, because he will be able to give you the authoritarian translation. So that is one. But number two, if you're looking at only the content aspect, I think any translation will help you. But I'm glad that you're bringing in political science and Mahabharata together. So a round of applause for that.
But can I add one or two more suggestions to that? One, don't rely on only one translation. Cross-check, and particularly if it is done by quote-unquote somebody whose skin is originally white. I don't want to use any other term.
Don't use that term.
Okay, check.
And also check whether this fellow is a Macaulay's child or not.
And since you have people who know the texts in the original, see, I'll give you an example. When I worked on Chomsky for my PhD thesis, and I'm not a big-time Chomsky scholar, I just went to the people who are Chomsky scholars and said, see, these are the kinds of assumptions I've made about this text and this text. Tell me if I'm right or wrong. And I got my answers. You can cross-check with somebody who knows the language. And you can then add in the clause saying, to the best of my ability, I've done all this. However, that's the addition that you can put in the thesis as a clause.
And as far as possible, you stay with, within the Indian soil. You approach people who are here, who are not Macaulay's children, and who really take pride in our heritage. So that would solve your issues. One more question.
Yes, ma'am. Namaste, ma'am. So, as you touched upon that series of invasion caused physical destruction, but the colonial imperialism caused a lot of civilizational plunder, where a lot of knowledge was lost.
Yes.
And so I wanted to understand that what would be the future roadmap. I wanted to comprehend that because a lot of time has passed since then, and we cannot be sitting on a blame game for these many years. So during your lecture, kindly touch upon that what can be roadmap to come out of that coloniality.
Thank you. We have to begin from our hearts, and we have to stay rooted in our own soil. So references must come from our own sources, and our own PhD submitted here. Texts that are written here but published elsewhere is also fine, but we begin from our own home. Alright, that is the first place to begin.
Some of your answers will probably come in our second session, so just hold your question till then, and if it's not answered by then, please come back and ask.
But I started to study Sanskrit because it's close to my heart. So I want to just add on to the colonial mindset that we all still hold on to. There was this recent ad of Manyavar where a famous actress talks about Kanyadan. And there is this, Dana is a very important aspect in our Indian society. And Kanyadan loosely translates in English as giving away your daughter. So, which we all think that our parents have kind of, relinquished us and given us away. But that is not true. And unless we are strong in our spiritual values, we wouldn't even realize it. Why I would like to bring this is, when you do a dana in any rituals, the terms namama is repeated to say that this no longer belongs to me. But in Kanyadan, that is the only dan, as far as I know, where it is deliberately left out. You do not say idam namama, because you don't give away the daughter. But the younger generation and people who have the colonial mindset still think that the daughter is given away. But our Indian society and our thinkers, they knew right in the beginning that Kanyadan does not mean giving away the daughter. She continues to have the rights and the responsibilities of both households after marriage.
This
So-
problem, just to interject in a minute.
Yeah.
See, this giving away, the expression that you're using, the giving away, it is British.
British, yes.
Because the father walks the bride
Correct.
what is this, across the aisle? And hands over. The father walks the bride and gives her away to the
Yes.
groom.
Yes, yes.
But we don't have that because
Correct.
dana is translated very loosely into whatever little that's available in the stupid English language.
Yes. So,
Because there are many concepts with us which do not exist in the English language.
Yes.
Not just because dana is not giving away.
Yes.
It is something else.
Yes.
Because namaha is not there. They have the concept of the original sin, but they do not have any terminology to indicate punyam.
Yes.
They have the papam equivalent original sin. But for punyam, they don't have any punyam at all. They are all papis.
I'm going to begin by talking about my own experiences of research. We do not know how it is in the other areas, but particularly in our area, which is English language education. Researching on how English is taught, how it is tested, this colonialism, this issue of thinking that our skin color matters. We need to remember though that the British, the Americans, the Australians, anybody who is, I call them Caucasian, will spend lots and lots of money applying oil on that skin, lying in the sun to get a brown tan. They will use sun lamps to get a brown skin. But this genuine brown skin is seen as not as good as skin made brown with the oil and the sun. It's time we threw that out. Now, I'd like to begin with a little bit of reflection about myself. 32 years I worked at EFL University, earlier called CIEFL. And I'm not lying, I'm not bluffing when I say I honestly never had the courage to genuinely go international and write papers and send them in to what we call, in their terms, the Ivy League journals. In our area, it is Applied Linguistics, TESOL Quarterly, and so on. So many of them. I would read them and say, I'm not as good as this. If I send a paper, it will not be accepted. I've never had the courage. Is it because I don't have the ability? I don't think so. Never have I had that kind of courage. I've always thought I'm only English is quote unquote only my second language. I'm not a native speaker of that language. I can't write like them.
This is coming from a professor of English. Alright, and what about people who are not in the field? We are made to feel ashamed, and there was this Macaulay minute that prodded a lot of motivational studies. I do not know whether Sanskrit has evidence of that. It's called motivational studies. Oh, it is so difficult to make our students study English. So how do we motivate them? So I said, you cannot motivate them unless you make them ashamed of their own language. Because we did not need any kind of motivation to learn English. Because we were self-sufficient with our own languages. That is why they had to come here and make us motivated. Even now, we have a lot of studies. If you look at theses that are submitted in our domain of English language education, you're going to find that most of the studies will tell you that how ineffective the English program is, how ineffective the English language classroom is, so on and so forth. That is because we do not find a need for English. This is an artificial need that is communicated from outside because they have to survive. Because we are very self-sufficient. Right now, the previous speaker was speaking in Sanskrit. Though I did not understand all of it, most of it I was able to understand because of my grounding. But this idea of motivational studies, those of you who are trying to do this, maybe in your own subjects, your own disciplines, you can work on it. But when it comes to English, this motivation studies is kind of forcing something on somebody. If they are not interested, why do they want to research, or why do they want to even sit and study? So this issue of motivation is
no, and then as she rightly said, I'm doing this personal reflection because it's high time we spoke about it. My own PhD students are all working in universities. One of them is until I retired, was my own colleague. Anybody here from EFL University will know Dr. Mahananda Pathak. He was my PhD student, and there he is today working in that ELE school. Nearly every one of them I've taught. Starting from Shruti Sarkar, Kishore Kumar downstairs. Below, not downstairs. Okay, all of them. I don't want to go into that list. After having seen so many students doing so well. Shadab's MA supervisor, Kshema Jose. Why is this happening? Let me leave that as a question mark. And then go on to ask, I'm going to talk about, again, this little bit is going to be personal history. But, I want to share with you the agony I went through when I wrote my PhD thesis. I did the thesis at CIEFL. It was a thesis in English language teaching. It was a theoretical thesis. Okay. I searched and wanted to state that language with a big L is not something which is static. Where there's a grammar book, there's a dictionary, and everybody should speak only according to that grammar book and dictionary, which meant that those of us who, quote unquote, were not native speakers were always seen as, again, deficient, approximating to native speaker norms. I said, no, there has to be a view of language which is developmental. And evaluation, that the term I used was convivial from Ivan Illich, which meant with care and tolerance. Which said, good, you're here now, you will be here tomorrow. The term that today Dr. Shree, Deepa and I use, which I know is a much better term, is humane perspective. Okay, but for that, when I answered a question about political science, the gentleman from Baroda, he said, how do I know that I've got a good translation? I said, look, I went and studied Chomsky, and I did not know whether I'm right or wrong. I went to the Chomskyians. Like that, I went and searched for a whole lot of linguists, all of them Western, Chomsky, Halliday, Brunner, Vygotsky, Wittgenstein, Bakhtin, got some answer. But my biggest regret, the saddest part of that PhD thesis was I desperately wanted to ground that argument in Indian philosophy. I went and asked somebody who knew Sanskrit. We don't have a Sanskrit department. To tell me, please tell me something about Vyakyapatiyam. Tell me something about Mahabhashyam. Where can I get information on the Guru tradition about what is evaluation? I didn't know Professor Prasad then. Even today, I say it with regret that I could not root that thesis in the Indian system of education. I'm sure there are better answers. Because Tolgapiyam in Tamil has a grammar that says the language spoken changes from place to place. Kurinji, Neidal, Palai, that is a desert, in the plains, in the mountains, they say the language changes. It's pragmatic. Then there must be, going by the very little bit I know of Skota theory, there has to be much better answers in the Indian tradition. But why was this not possible? I looked at so many of them. But linguistic studies done in linguistics, in the linguistics department at CIFL or EFIU, which is very, very strong, has not even touched on anything done in Indian philosophy. There's a whole department here. How many of them know anything about Paninian grammar? They talk about it and say, Paninian grammar is written so well that you can use it for computer programming. But that's the only mention we hear of Paninian grammar. Paninian. Why did that happen? I did try going to the Upanishads. But then, reading translations of the Upanishads available in tiny books at the Ramakrishna Mutt bookstore got me nowhere. How I wish I could have come here, registered for an MA in Sanskrit, learned all that I wanted to learn, and then go back and write that thesis. We don't think of mixing the two. I'm glad it's happening today. I got my degree in 2004, not very long ago, meaning it's only about 20 years. But that's okay. But that's personal history to state that I felt deprived. I felt sad. That shouldn't happen. But where are we today? Where are we today? I wanted to put up the name of one article, but I forgot to key it in. It doesn't matter because the name can be taken from elsewhere. 2017, I wrote one article. I presented a paper at a seminar in Delhi, and then it got published. Okay, and this was in one area. Now that paper got published as conference proceedings. I collated with a perspective 30 years of research work done in India alone on the use of the L1 or the mother tongue or the more enabled language as a resource in the English classroom. That was important because we come from a Western culture, quote unquote, which says use only English in the English classroom. We've had to fight to bring our strengths, our mother tongues, into the English classroom. But there was some language development conference. I got this idea and said, let me sit and collate from the library. It was mostly MPhil PhD theses. At that point in time, there were very few articles in journals from India. Elsewhere, some, but I didn't want that. I deliberately focused only on work done. And And then the end result is, it's like, I still remember it's a kind of joy. You remember we did a small Padlet presentation for some British Council program and some foundation scholarship. And everybody kept telling us, why do you want to talk about our work with them? I said, no, we need to go there and talk about the work that we are doing. And the speaker who came after us, the first article he put up there was the article written by me. And said, see, now at least, he said, I'm not saying this to say I'm great. No. I'm saying this that as an example, as an inspiration for everybody here. Even if it's only 4 articles written by other Indians, make sure you cite them. Make sure you refer to them. Because if we don't talk about the work done in our country, nobody else will. Today that article is up there being cited and used by everybody. It would not have happened if I had not started saying, let's do this. I still remember that same person who's now a colleague, Mahananda Pathak, very hesitantly came to me and said, ma'am, I went to these Assamese medium schools to look at whether English is used in those content classes. They are not. But in the English class, they are using Assamese only for classroom communication and good morning, good evening. I think that there are many other ways in which the first language Assamese can be used. Do you think I can do an MPhil thesis on that topic? Another boy came to me and said, I teach literature in Bangla way beyond 4 hours by train from Kolkata. My students use guidebooks, but I think I can use their knowledge of Bangla literature to help them understand what is irony. Can I do that for my thesis? Everybody had told him he can't. Mahananda came back and told me, ma'am, I cannot record anything in my classes because it's, in a hut, small village. I can't record anything. What do I do? I simply said, you dare to be different. You take down whatever you've done. Write a long teacher's diary after your class is over every day. We will convert it into a thesis. Same thing, Diganta came and told me, ma'am, I can't record because I'm teaching 7 of them in my house after class hours. I said, nothing lost. You record your problems. Shree Ganeshan from Sri Lanka wanted to use theatre to teach his Tamil medium students. And it was during the war, LTTE war. I remember it was during bombing. He came and said, I lost a student. I don't have much recordings. He said, it does not matter. What you want to do has to be valued and respected. You record whatever you can. It's my job as a supervisor, as a guide, to help you write that thesis. Now this courage to be different, to say these are our conditions, because the Western world has classrooms which have built-in cameras in all 4 corners. So students go in, whatever is taught is done, automatically gets recorded. They have all the ways of capturing evidence. So they go international with statistics, with recordings. We don't.
Whatever little data that the Westerners get, they go on regurgitating and recycling it in so many different ways that it's just 1 rupee worth of data but projected as 1 lakh rupees. This is what they are very good at. But we have about 1 crore rupees worth of information with us, but we devalue it and make it as 1 rupee. So we need to dare to reclaim our research turf or the research landscape and speak from our own roots in our own classrooms and start citing and keep talking about our problems and our solutions to all those problems. Because we have to be the leaders in this area, in our own disciplines, because we have a huge heritage behind us. And we need to start valuing it and start working on it and build the research landscape that is our own. And stop shopping for information from the West. And stop valuing them above us.
Again, one more example and then we'll go further. Another of my students worked in critical thinking, enabling critical thinking. And he went from college to college asking, can I teach a few classes? They wouldn't allow him because he wanted to use Hindi as the base language. And in the end, he worked in a small mosque in Nampally, outside which there were about 4-5 rooms. In one room with 7 students, but he carried out an amazing experiment. He said, you record what you've done. We'll convert it to a thesis. He's got his PhD. He's got a job in the university today and he's publishing. Because he had the courage, we told him, don't worry about, there were so many articles in critical thinking with this experiment, that semester experiment, this experiment. I said, they have all those facilities. We don't. We will not be apologetic about it. What we have, they don't have. Our children can think in their languages, even if for whatever other reasons, they are not able to do it in English. It does not matter. But it's like we need the courage to talk about and to do what we want to do. That's one. Now, I assume, and I'm not sure yet, that in the arts, in music, in Sanskrit, in Indian languages, I don't know, I'm hoping we'll get an answer. Are we using our research methods in our own work? We have somebody from political science. We have somebody from somewhere else. Can you tell us, are you using Indian research methods in your own PhD work? Are we even aware of it? I'm not condemning, I'm not judging, I'm trying to find out. Definitely not in the ELT discipline, not in linguistics. And if so, this is the way to begin. Maybe the methods are the same, the terms are different. I don't know. That only Professor Prasad or somebody else can tell us. Because what you pointed out as ways of researching seem very similar to what everybody does. But is it only a terminological difference? I don't think it is that small. I think there is a lot more. But we don't have answers. We don't know our Indian knowledge system. I'm very ashamed to state. I grew up as a Macaulay child. So, where can we go after this? Where can we go from here? One, I'd like to now ask a question to those of you who know or doing MA Sanskrit, PhD and so forth. See, when we look at ways of argumentation, Western world has thesis, antithesis, synthesis. What about Indian systems of argumentation? Are there more? There has to be. Can somebody give us an answer? Ways of writing. Why is everybody saying no?
Good afternoon, ma'am. Actually, I am not from Sanskrit background, but my discipline is philosophy. So, I am doing research in Indian philosophy also. So, I think we can connect this to the Purva Paksha, Uttara Paksha, etc. The way in which Indian texts are written. And that is having a more clear method than many other works that we see abroad, because they try to express the opponent's position in the clearest manner they can, and then only they examine that, and after that they criticize it and then propose their own. So I think that can connect to what you have just suggested.
Is there anything else?
One thing that we need to understand here is that till today, any knowledge that came from the Sanskrit tradition or ancient Indian knowledge system tradition, it was kept in a locked box somewhere. But now we are attempting to open the box and prove to the general public that this is applicable to every discipline and in a much more detailed fashion than the Western knowledge systems. For example, the Samvad system of questioning. The previous speaker was talking about how Nachiketas, questioned and the importance of questioning. And this was something that I heard an Upanyasam, because I'm not a Sanskritist, nor do I know enough of Sanskrit to understand. But then in one of the translation Upanyasams, I had heard about the Kathopanishad, where the questions that Nachiketas asked and how beautifully he was able to question at 5 years old. But in our discipline of English language education, even in a UG classroom or a PG classroom, we reduce the question, the teaching of the questioning, to teaching of syntax. So all WH questions and followed by how and when and who was Ram, why did his dog die, where did he die, so on and so forth. So tree diagrams after tree diagrams happen. But
and then what is worse is we teach those stupid, I'm sorry to use that term, how to use tag questions.
Tag questions.
Does he, doesn't he, is he, he'll do this.
He likes it, doesn't he?
That's not questioning. And then, even worse, the art of teaching through asking questions. Where did it originate? Who did it first? Who used it first? The example that we are given is how in one of Plato's dialogues it is recorded that Socrates taught a slave geometry by asking that quote-unquote uneducated, illiterate slave the shape of a triangle, something, and that is cited as the first source of teaching in a classroom using questions. But from what I've understood with the little dialogues I've had, the whole Guru Sishya tradition has questions asked by disciples or by gurus. Prasad Garu, how much older is the art of questioning before Socrates and Plato? Can you come and tell us something about that? And then we'd like to bring in Amar Teja to talk about his work. Shanatan, want you to be ready about the kinds of argumentation that you've talked about in the project. Please think about it. Okay?
Ko Adha Vedasya. Professor Devadattaji was quoting this Vedic quotation. Who has written the Veda? He has created his entire universe. From that point onwards, there was questioning in the tradition. So this questioning is not taught by Socrates or any other Western philosopher. First of all, we should realize this is a really wonderful point.
Prashnopanishad is there. It is totally question type. Second one is Prashnopanishad and Pippalada Acharya. 5 disciples went there and they have 5 questions. I think 5 questions. And at that time, the Acharya Pippalad said them, you should live here, you should stay here for 1 year. Then I will give you your answer. So, he want to test the patience, tapas, and he told them, if
At that time, if I am able to give answer, then I will give you answer. Otherwise, you have your own way.
So the issue of motivation was never a problem.
Yes. And we can't say that this is the starting point of that questioning method. So I think it is very ancient, according to our scriptures. And in Brihadaranyaka also, Gargi, so many questions. Maitri, so many questions. So in this way, in whole our tradition, question-answer method is there. In Mahabhashya also, question-answer method is there. So hence, we can conclude that this method is as ancient as our scriptures. My English is okay?
No, perfect.
There is also one Janaka Sulabha Samvada. King Janaka is said to be the greatest Rajarshis. He is called Jivan Mukta. He was performing his duties. At the same time, he is also living like Avadhuta. He is doing the administration with the king. At the same time, a great scholar. Such a scholar was defeated by one great woman called Sulabha. Karmanaiva samsiddhim astita janakadeha, Geetha says. Such a Janaka was defeated by a woman. There are different angles in this, that's why I am trying to tell. Number one is about questioning. Number two, about the empowerment of women also. Of course, that's a different topic. But with regard to the knowledge, this is so. They used to exist debates. In Charaka Samhita, Vimanasthana, wonderful discussion happens. First of all, we should examine the teacher. Then only you should examine the student. But the current system never examines the teacher. When you clear your eligibility test, you are a teacher. That's it. How you clear the test, nobody knows. But students, you are getting graded. Charaka Samhita is giving this very stringent instructions how to test the knowledge of a guru and Sishya. This is Samvada. And they beautifully named it Tadvidya Sambhasha. Tadvidyai Saha Sambhasha. Yes. I think in Vedanta, Tadvidya, one more technical word is used, but in Charaka Samhita, Tadvidya Sambhasha. Vishaja Saha Sambhasheta. If you are a scholar, in order to increase your knowledge, you have to speak to other scholars. Vade jayate tattvabodha. When you put a debate or argument with other, then only we share the knowledge with the other. That is a healthy debate. Unlike the parliament debates we conduct. So there is a distinction definitely. This is highly reflected in all the scriptures.
The thing is, we need a bridge between this knowledge treasure that we have and defeat the colonial mindset. So the first step for all of us would be to release ourselves from the colonial mindset and start a debate with those people who possess a colonial mindset. So me and my students, we have tried to open it up a little bit. We have a lot of oppositions and obstructions in our way, but still we want to go ahead no matter what. So we want to do it till death do us apart. So we started, I would like Amar to speak about his topic, in which he started looking at UG students. He did not know what to do, but slowly he's gotten into using the Samvad technique of teaching questioning. And I'm amazed at how a 5-year-old boy was able to frame such difficult questions. Whereas a 40 or 50 or a 70 or a 80-year-old university professor is not able to think of such questions. They don't even know why they are existing. The first question starts with, who am I? And in our ancient systems, a 5-year-old boy was able to come up with this amount of paravidya. And this was the tradition. And where have we lost it? We are using our knowledge system only to exist. It really pains me because we are leading a life that is lesser than a dog's life. The dog is born, a human being is born. A dog dies, we also die. So what happens in between? Nothing happens. We just eat and sleep. So, but this kind of a jigyasa way of researching must become our second nature, and we don't need to work too much into it because it's coded in our DNA. You just need to toggle the switch, it will be on all by itself. Unlike the Westerners who have to struggle a lot. We don't need to struggle. It's in our genes. Our grandfathers existed that way. You just toggle the switch of your genetics inside your body, it will come up. So, over to Amarteja.
Questioning techniques in the classroom at UG level. What we did in the classroom is like we did not teach them grammar in traditional manner. So we tried to introduce questioning techniques like everybody teaches like Socratic method questioning and WH questions, question tags, these things. We did not do that. For that we designed one activity using a simple pamphlet which you get in a supermarket. With that pamphlet we taught them art of questioning. Like I'll simply tell in 2 or 3 minutes I'll finish it. So we took one pamphlet to the classroom and we gave to the students that pamphlet. So the thing is they have to shop on behalf of the teacher. So for teacher they have to shop from the list, so that they have to do like, so they need to select the items from the list which teacher likes it or with how she uses for herself. So they have to make a list of items and then they have to give reasons and like reasons and
in order to do that, copying from the Nachiketas, what I did to the students is that I offered them 3 questions that they can ask me to shop on behalf of me. I would give them 2,600 rupees and they have to buy me some stuff, but they have to buy me stuff that I would use. And in order to find that out, they can ask me 3 questions.
So 3 questions they have to ask ma'am to tell her, to know her preferences and this thing. So each group gets chance to ask 3 questions. So in the initial stage they think that we can choose what ma'am likes, we can choose whatever items we like that they made a list, they did not use the questions. So then they came up with list and then ma'am was telling them that I don't use this one, I have already this in the room. So then they realized the importance of questioning and art of questioning. And then they asked again, ma'am, we did not use our chances, let us try one more time. So then they were very careful and they framed their questions very constructively, and then they constructed brilliant questions like they're asking pin to the point questions, like they used again 3 questions, and then so in this way we introduced questioning system. Like it is also dialogic between teacher and the student. It's not like a task, teacher simply gives some work and they'll do and they'll come. No, it's dialogic. Dialogic is samvad, as I know. So that's how we introduce these techniques in the classrooms at UG level. So this is what we did in the classroom.
And Amarteja got inspired by this task and he's changing the entire focus of his research because he found that there's a lot of value using our own Indian knowledge systems. But in the tradition of ELT, we are expected to build our own theoretical framework which comes from the Western philosophy. And we dare to change and we dare to reclaim our turf by saying this is also a very viable theoretical framework. We are going to use it. You better be okay with it. So he's not yet ready to submit. We expect a lot of obstructions in our way, but then we are willing to face it and take it further.
And one more thing, on this task we presented a poster at Indian Knowledge Systems at IIT Roorkee. And the question we got from the entire sessions are like, somebody asked like you only question. So we are using all Western pedagogies. So how can we implement Indian knowledge systems or Indian knowledge in regular curriculum with Western pedagogies? This question is arised from the audience. So then So how do you introduce your Indian knowledge system with regular curriculum? So that's what we are experimenting in UG level classrooms, like introducing Indian knowledge, terms and techniques like this. That's all. Thank you.
One small clarification: when he said pamphlet, you know what he's talking about? What is slipped into our newspapers?
Newspaper index.
Ratnadeep, this much off, that much off, 20% off, 30% off, 15% off, those little sheets of paper that are slipped, that is all that was used in the classroom. Nothing that had to come from somewhere, downloaded, printed, nothing like that. Like when he said pamphlet, it wasn't clear what it was. Every once in a while, supermarkets will give you Spencer's, something else will say this much off on this much off on that, one big sheet. That was the resource used in the classroom.
And whenever we go to international conferences everywhere, we make it a point to let people know we are proud of our tradition and we are not going to use it in a negative sense. Maybe you are ashamed of your tradition. We don't have a problem with that. But we are not using the word traditional in a negative sense. But we are going to use it in a very positive sense because we know we existed and our knowledge systems were much more complex and much more simpler also. Because the whole knowledge of Brahmanda was put in a seed of a fig tree, if I'm right. And the knowledge systems that were disseminated did not require any kind of technological advances like this. They would use a small pot to make complex ideas accessible to all of us, using very simple stuff that's available, that doesn't require huge technological advances. So that kind of a preparation we had. And this is the kind of tradition that we have forgotten, that we have made systematically ashamed of because of people like Macaulay. Alright? So we can use technology, we can use the Western ideas, we can use the Western comforts, but then we should never lose our own basic traditions. We need to reclaim our tradition. Because the kind of soil that we occupy is very unique. And no matter how many Westerners come and try to teach us, they're not going to be able to teach us because they are not us. And if we don't speak, who else is going to speak? So from now on, what I would request from the audience is that whenever you have a possibility or an opportunity to go international, be it a conference, be it whatever, you must take the opportunity. And use your own languages, such as English, to use it as a window to India. Because otherwise, English is a language that is a window to the world. But it's the other way around as well. You can use English to open up a window for the rest of the world to look at us, to look at how self-sufficient we are. We are talking of recycling. What is it that we were deficient in? One time plastic was never a part of our tradition. We ate on banana leaves. And the waste system was so beautifully managed by all of us. But we've lost everything. Now the planet is polluted. We are talking of carbon footprint, so on and so forth. This is all because we are ashamed of our own tradition of eating with our fingers. Because we did not eat with our fingers, you got the spoons. You got the one-time use spoons. And now you have a problem of disposal. Otherwise, we just ate with our hands and we washed it. And we had our own lotas, we had our own chombus, which we drank from. So these things were not a part of our tradition. We had mud pots. We had a whole system. And we are made to be ashamed of our tradition, which we should stop being this moment forward. Whatever the system that we have. I'm not saying this system is better than that system, but on the whole, we have a beautiful working system and we need to reclaim our system. We need to be proud of our system. leading from there our own Indian research methodologies. We need to apply in our classroom.
We'd like to move from the what of research to the how in terms of writing research. Again, we don't have answers from what is available in Sanskrit. But so much is being made today. What was that term? English for research and publication purposes. They're sitting and analyzing what is the kind of style of writing, what is done, and then they're making comparisons. The natives and the non-natives, and the way they write. I'm talking of our field of English language education. Something called grammatical metaphor. How a whole clause is made into a phrase. And it's up there. But there are so many styles of writing as far as Indian writing systems are concerned. I'm talking of cause effect. Okay, there are about half a dozen. I remember Sanatan making a presentation on this some time back. Sayantan, sorry. I changed your name. Sayantan. Right. Now that is what we should be bringing in to analyze. That is what we should be bringing in as our styles of writing and not be ashamed of it. If we don't bring in our work into, what we are proud of, into our work, we won't go anywhere. I think there are about students in terms of MA and PhD students. Can I just have a show of hands? How many of you are studying in some university or college, in some university here? Any part of the country? Yeah, at least about 20 of you. First request. Don't ever, quote unquote, attend a conference. Go present a paper. Send in the paper for publication about what you're doing. If they say no, very well, and they tell you why, you will know why, what to do to send it up the next time. Don't ever say that, because I've done it enough in my initial years, and then I've told my students, don't you ever think of attending a conference. Go and present a paper. Don't waste your conference time by... You don't need to do that anymore. Go and present. Talk about whatever you know. Apply it. Take what you've done. Apply it to an Indian knowledge system. Present it and talk about it. That way we find that things will change. See, for us today, English is not a second language. My language of academics is English. So for somebody else it is Hindi. For somebody else it is Sanskrit. For somebody else it is some other language. We need to be able to be proud of that heritage. I'm no longer scared to say, I can't write for them. They'd better accept what we write. They will. Until we can say, we are the largest group anyway in the world speaking English other than China. China is no longer. We are the largest speaking English community in terms of numbers. But in terms of academic work, whether it's maths, whether it's physics, whether it's science, whether it's history, in all our areas, we're all writing in English. But we're not talking about our systems. That is where the integration has to happen.
Like in Python or whatever language, the code which China do is in their own language. So for the hacker as well, it is difficult to decode those codes. Recently, Vikas Divyakirti sir, who is a professor of IS student, so he said that we are ashamed of our language, we are ashamed of our mother tongue, but people all around the world are not. Even German, one of my cousin went to German and she said me that the amount of English they speak is very less and amount of mother tongue they speak, amount of native languages they speak is much higher.
I do not know anymore whether that is a problem and what the solution is to be, that because India, Hindi is one language that can be comfortably used in many places because it's a large speaking population. But I cannot do academics in Tamil. Because we have so many languages, I think we'll just have to say that English is one of our languages, but it is our language, and we will do with the language whatever we want to do.
But then what we do with the language is we take in concepts from Sanskrit and our own rich culture and heritage, and then impose it on whatever discipline that we are working with. One example, and we are going to end with that, is going to be one shloka from Bhagavad Geetha, which is Anudvegakaram Vakyam. That slokam that I got to know recently. But then the application of that particular slokam into the realm of language studies is so deep. The quality of speech that one person has to use, being an educated person, quote unquote. But according to the Western traditions, educated means somebody who has collected a few pieces of papers. I call them few pieces of papers because degrees, and now that has become virtual, so you just get a photograph. Now, how is that photograph of your PhD or MA degree different from any other photograph in your cell phone? It has to do something to the person. If you pick up a couple of papers, it's not going to take you anywhere. So we need to reclaim our own traditional systems and apply it on whatever discipline that we are working in. And it is possible, believe me. So whatever you're going to pick up from these 4 days, try and apply it to your own discipline and try and learn a lot more and bring Indian knowledge systems as your theoretical frameworks. Because if we do not do that, we are wasting our academic life big time. Because in a few years' time, we will be left nowhere. We've already wasted 75 years of our time. We have to reclaim and we have to dare to be different. The journey is not going to be easy. But then, if we do not undertake it, who else will? So with that, we end the session. So, Dhanyavadaha.
Hello. Yeah, so my name is Anirudh. I'm a PhD student in economics from IIT Hyderabad. So this is not a question actually. So just as you are like telling your experiences, like I'm doing my PhD international trade, something which does with the imports and exports. So like I'm trying to think like how can I root my research in Indianness? That's the essence of your this session. So I think there are two challenges. Like for me, like if I go about the trade theories and all, they say trade started with colonialism or imperialism and all. But we all know that even before Christ, 50 BC, 100 BC, India was doing trade with Roman civilization and Greek civilization and all. So like at least if I just want to mention that we don't have I need to know the source. Like somewhere it should be mentioned, right? Yeah, that Kautilya, it's about Rajadharma and Rajaniti and all. No, I haven't read it. Yeah. So, yeah, so I mean, so when like if you want to look at the, I'm much more data. If I want to look at much more data, yeah, Kautilya I know about Kautilya Arthashastra. If you want to know more data, like more data in the Sanskrit literature, how to search that literature is one issue, I think, and also I don't know Sanskrit, so that will be another issue. And other thing is we want to do research using Indian research methods. So what are those methods? It's not like that's not really clear. The previous session it was like all those already the methodology like exploratory research, other researches which are already there. The session was like all those methods were already being applied. So what unique? Something unique Indian method are we talking about? Maybe in next sessions or future sessions that will be like which unique Indian research methods.
to establish here is that this has been there even before the BCs. But the thing is, we have not claimed. We don't have patents on all of that. Now, US has patents on neem. US has patent on turmeric. We were all sitting and sleeping. Now they have the patent. They're going to take patents on everything else. But you are the youngsters. We are growing old. So it's your job to reclaim. So you have to find out, maybe this question is not going to be answered over the next 5 minutes. Maybe over the 4 days, we can interact and we can try and find a solution to all of that. Alright?
Thank you. Anirudh, actually, it's a very good question. Just to supplement what you have said, Manishyavati Bhumihi Ityarthaha, he says at the end of 15th Adhikarana, what you mean by Artha Shastra? Artha is basically not exactly money, the currency that we transact. Artha is Bhumi Paragavati. Because Tasyaha Palane Labha Upayaha, how to maintain, how to procure the land, how to maintain the land. This is what we told in this Artha Shastra. So that is how he starts to give the, he starts to narrate about the actual meaning of Artha Shastra. The one thing. Second is about trade. I missed I don't know whether I completely followed you. About trade, Kautilya told thousands of things. Thousands of things. One example I will quote. There used to exist one police officer, A.K. Khan, in Hyderabad. I think he worked as a police commissioner. He was visiting the airport, customs and excise. These two departments exist together nowadays. Earlier, this was not the case. While going to airport, he was reading Artha Shastra in Telugu, translated by Professor Kullela Sriramachandra. And for his surprise, in 1 hour journey, he was able to find so many things related to customs and excise mentioned by Kautilya. Then he requested the airport authorities, why don't they put together these two departments? Customs is somewhere and excise elsewhere. Based on Kautilya's input suggested by A.K. Khan, now these two departments exist together in Hyderabad airport. See, one small instance can change a whole lot. And with regard to taxation, his taxation system is totally different than what we follow today. And with regard to the corruption, 40 types of embezzlement he has spoken about in the system, administration and governance. Chatvarsh Daharanopaya, 40 types. And with regard to agriculture, how to compensate the farmers who lose while cultivating. What not? Even with regard to the environmental laws, he spoke a lot. Don't pluck the flowers unnecessarily, don't cut the trees. In the name of development, we cut a lot of trees. When I was in Bangalore in 2001, I was working there. That one single year, 60,000 trees have been cut off. In the name of developing flyovers, etc. Almost 22 years are over. I don't know what happened in such a city. It is called the Green City of India, something like that. Where is the greenery? But he imposes penalties on such people. And he is given a beautiful juvenile laws. Actually, our constitution has taken a lot from Artha Shastra and also from Smritis. So, there is much more to explore. There is one IDSA in New Delhi, Indian Defence Studies Academy, I think. Now it is renamed as Manohar Parrikar Indian IDSA, something like that. Right? So, they are doing wonderful job. Colonel Pradeep Gautam, I think his name is, if I'm not wrong. He is translating Kavandani Ridhisara and one more text, Artha Shastra. I think 2-3 texts has translated. All those texts wonderfully translated into very good English. They put for free PDFs. Unfortunately, we are not aware. Whatever we talk today is part of my case. I really appreciate you for this wonderful question. But youngsters like you have to work in this domain. I really appreciate for joining us because you are from IIT and hallmark of education IITs. Youngsters like you, if you can concentrate on such things, really